Did you spend your childhood stomping on turtles? Maybe chasing big mushrooms? Do you dream about diving down green pipes to emerge in a magical place where you have awesome powers? I might have just the setting for you. Find out more. Hello and welcome to Weltfury Entertainment. I'm joined today by Jeremy Puckett of Blackwing Productions. I already have to look at a cue card. That's going to be an amazing interview. And we're going to talk about his upcoming product, Heroes of Terra, the Mushroom War. So, hello Jeremy, first and foremost. Thank you for joining me today.
Hi!
Very glad we could make that. If you've seen my interviews, that is a question both for Jeremy and for my lovely audience out there. Then you know I like to get to know my interview partner a bit before we jump into the actual product. So Jeremy, tell us a bit about who are you, what do you do, and what do you do if you're not designing upcoming Savage Worlds settings?
Well, like you said, I'm Jeremy Puckett. I'm a 39-year-old librarian from Lexington, Kentucky. In my day job, I used to be an instructional designer for a local university, but now I am a rep for a local hospital. I have been working in role-playing for about a decade now, and playing a lot longer than that. I'm married with 5 lovely cats. And I would say that I am what you might think of as a lifestyle gamer, in that I've been role-playing for so long, it's pretty much become the central hobby of my life.
Yeah, I can so relate to that. I mean, look what I'm doing in my spare time.
Yeah, I know, right?
That is also, I would like to commend you on your choice of posters behind you.
Thank you.
That is
thank
really
you.
Awesome.
That is actually my wife's, and this is the cloth map I got from the Exalted 3rd edition Kickstarter a couple of years back.
Oh, nice. Well,
yeah.
Me being a
I am
German,
a sucker for cloth maps. Oh my god.
Yeah, me being a German, I have the dumb luck of being European, so usually shipping costs just would be horrible.
Oh my god, especially these days.
Yeah, so mostly I just can't go for physical stuff. So yeah, maps and physical printed books are just way out of my reach. So yeah, I consider me envious. Wow, cool. So yeah, Heroes of Terra.
Yeah.
Where did that come from? I mean, it's basically everyone who's role playing for at least I think 5 to 10 years has dreamed about, oh, I have this awesome video game I would like to run a campaign in, and you've just decided to take it a step further. So how did that come to pass?
I really went down the rabbit hole with this one, honestly. I've been playing Savage Worlds for I want to say close to 12 years now. And I used to be in a local university gaming club back when I was an undergraduate, and I helped organize their conventions, which, you know, drew a couple of hundred people. And one year we just wound up short on GMs, and so I'm like, I can, you know, throw together a Savage Worlds game in like an hour. What do I do? And I had recently been replaying an emulator of Super Mario World 3, which is one of the best video games ever made. And I had this awful idea of, what if I did a convention game that was just in the Mario world? And so I did the whole thing. It was this incredibly goofy campaign with a pair of car mechanics from New York instead of plumbers. And it was a lot of fun. And from there, I started thinking about, well, why shouldn't I do something that has this kind of nostalgia and good humor about self-referential stuff? Right around this time, there was also a thread on RPGNet about taking the conceits of the Mario World setting and turning them into something like pulpy sword and sorcery, Conan wielding his sword, Hyperborean fantasy. And I think those two ideas of something self-referential and sword and sorcery, pulpy, grim dark, kind of gelled in my mind, and it just sort of sat there for a couple of years until I started working on the idea of, what if you took the Mario Brothers movie and made it not suck? No, like the idea that there was this parallel world that had been caused by the impact of the asteroid 65 million years ago, a world where magic never died out. And Terra just sort of came together from all those disparate threads, and I've been revising it bit by bit until finally, 2.5 years ago, I went to Pinnacle and asked for a license to produce Heroes of Terra as a third-party supplement. And I want to take a moment to say that Jody Black is just one of the best people I have ever worked with in the industry. She is incredibly friendly, incredibly professional, just so easy to work with. And she walked me through the whole process of becoming a licensee. And since then, I have sort of been on this tear of trying to get Heroes of Terra ready for Kickstarter. It took a little longer than I was hoping for, but I really wanted to have everything in a place where it was basically ready to go. You know, with just art and layout and a little additional writing ready to do.
Yeah, that's actually never a bad place to go to when you want to do a Kickstarter thing. Just have something you can publish regardless. Even if everything falls apart and it fails, and the Kickstarter fails, may the gods prevent that. Then
yeah, and honestly, we're doing better than I kind of feared we would do. You know, like I kind of thought when I did this Kickstarter, like 3 people had pledged to it, and 2 of them were people I knew in real life. And like one was a guy who was like really interested. And Jetstream, if you're watching this, you know I'm talking about you.
Yeah, and as far as the Kickstarter is concerned, I mean, we're about the halfway point, and we're about halfway there. And well, the middle part usually is a bit slower. So
it is.
Yeah. So if the end kicks back up again, then yeah, I can absolutely see that.
I would love for the Kickstarter to get funded. I really would, but at this point, it's just been so heartwarming how many people have contributed to try and bring my little dumb idea to life.
Well, I guess that proves it really isn't a dumb idea.
Yeah, my grandma always told me if it's dumb but it works, then it wasn't dumb. So I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. So and at least you know, even if you can't make it on Kickstarter, then yep, screw it. Just put it together as it is. Maybe put a few small personal funds in and release it, because there are going to be people out there who want it. I being one of them.
Terra is coming down the pipe either way. Just this Kickstarter is so that we can have, you know, a little nicer art, you know, professional layout. Sigil Entertainment currently is lined up to do that layout and trade dress. Cool. And I would love to work with them, but if not, you know, I'll hack it together in my living room like I've done with everything else so far. And the art working on Heroes of Terra stuff right now, Jen, is a fabulously talented artist. He normally does fan work for Exalted, and his style is just so ethereal and dreamlike. It is everything I could have hoped for Terra.
Yeah, like a visualization of a world where magic never died brought to paper. Cool. Yeah, from what I've seen from the Jumpstart, that's if that is representative for the rest, that's going to be really great, and it really captures the flavor of the whole idea, in my opinion. So yeah, speaking of the Jumpstart is out. Depending on when you're going to watch this, it's either going to be still on Kickstarter or it's going to be out in one form or another. Nevertheless, you're going to find links down below this video, either to the Jumpstart or the Kickstarter campaign, or both, or the finished product on Drive-Thru-RPG. You might never know.
You never know.
So yeah, there are going to be a few playable races in there, but let's go a bit back, take a step back from that to the whole idea. So Terra is this alternate dimension planet, a mirror of our world, or is it something separate altogether?
Well, the idea is that there used to just be one world, and that that world was a place where magic was real, and the living energy of the world had sort of a global consciousness. That it was a self-aware, a living planet, I sometimes say. And this planet as it was getting ready to be hit by a planet killer asteroid, expended a whole lot of its power to try and not get killed. And that sort of cracked the universe into two dimensional states. One where the asteroid impacted and a whole lot of life was wiped out, and the living magic of the world was torn away, leaving basically just a rock in space. And another one where the asteroid near missed, and the planet used up so much energy that it sort of fell into a coma for millions of years, but it was still alive, and the magic was still real. And so Terra is sort of a dimensional twin of Earth. They're locked together across this dimensional void. So they're two worlds that can never escape each other and have all of these connections through dimensional pathways. So Terra is a world where the dinosaurs never died out, where mammals never evolved very large or very important. And all of the important races are descended from either dinosaurs or intelligent plant life.
So these dimensional gateways, are they shaped like green plumbing pipes?
They are indeed. The warp tunnels are the legacy of a lost race called the Forebears, who built these jade and steel gateways to travel between Earth and Terra for various reasons, which will hopefully be explored in a future supplement. And who also opened doors to other worlds, less stable worlds that aren't quite as real as Earth or Terra. The dimensional space between the two worlds is called the warp, and so these worlds that aren't quite so stable are, you might be able to guess, warp zones.
Was about to ask.
Nice.
Cool. So yeah, there are going to be a few playable races. Well, humans being the foremost, most
Yes.
relatable, because well, everybody knows how to be a human. What most people don't know is how to be a human with superpowers, is what you become when
Yes.
you travel there. So Mike, the first question is, can every human travel there, or are the humans that travel there special in that they still have some spark of magic inside them and just don't know it?
The idea of why humans are so central to this setting is partly because, well, you know, the Italian plumber is the main character of the games. But also, I used to roleplay with a lot of people who were like, I don't like playing humans. Humans are boring. And I never got that. I think humans are amazing. And so I wanted to create the setting where humans were these central mythical figures. And so all life on Earth has sort of adapted to live without magic. And so it's become very, very efficient at processing what little magic remains on Earth. So when animals from Earth are brought to Terra, they're suddenly glutted with more magic than they can handle. And humans, being self-aware, are able to channel that magic, able to control it. And so humans become these living fonts of magical energy on Terra. I mean, in theory, every human would have these kind of incredible powers, but only a few people find their way to Terra, and that's because Terra has a little bit of control over the warp gates and over the dimensional passage, and so she tends to pull across humans who would be useful to her, humans who have a spark of heroism or hope or belief, people who are willing to be champions of the living world. And in the past, you would only get maybe one human a generation who was brought across like that. You know, incredible heroes like Gilgamesh is mentioned in the book, and Amelia Earhart. But now, because of the Mushroom War, because the war is being so large scale and doing so much environmental damage, Terra is crying out for heroes and bringing across humans in unprecedented numbers by the dozens. And so now there are all these basically living demigods walking around on Terra fighting for the Earth. And so humans have this big central place in the setting as major magical figures who no one understands how their power works.
Yeah, they're really powerful. They're hopefully on the side of good. So as far as I understand it now, it's a conscious act of the world to balance itself out again, because the war
it's
just so
conscious, but not quite. Like, I've always tried to present Terra as being like this presence who is aware and alive, but doesn't really think like people think, like on the small scale. You know, it's like an immune reaction. You know, you know you're sick, and you know something will make it better, and so you sort of have this auto response to bring in white cells, and humans happen to be Terros white cells.
Yeah, like the whole concept of Gaia, like our even our Earth being a living, breathing being which reacts to something, or who I should rather say. Cool, so that is humans. Well, there are many, many more, and let's just jump the queue all the way to the end to my favorite one. Who are the Yoshis?
Oh, the Quetzals, yes. I knew I had to make the Yoshi equivalent a playable race, and when I was a kid, I watched a lot of shows about dinosaurs. I think every kid in America does watch a lot of shows about dinosaurs, honestly. And so I was always fascinated by this idea of, there were these dinosaurs that if they had been left alone a while longer, could have become more intelligent, more humanoid. And so all of the saurian races kind of stem from that. Quetzals are, they're non-materialistic and friendly. They're the sort of good saurian race in this setting. I wanted to make them like larger raptor kind of creatures. They're tree dwelling. They have a very non-materialistic society that is all about freedom and making the world around them balanced and more pleasant to live in. And they actually, for a long time, had a close relationship with the major plant-based race of the setting, the Mandragorans, as they were the sort of the cavalry knights of the setting. They were cavalry mounts who were also cavalry knights. Because one of their big racial abilities is that they can serve as a mount for a humanoid creature.
Yeah, I've seen that. So that's pretty much why they are my favorite, because I personally like to play utility characters. I don't like to be the guy who's always in front and center, but just at the back and providing support and everything. And now I can just have somebody riding on. That sounds so wrong if you say that loud. Riding on me into battle.
Yeah, like every time I've run like a convention game, there's inevitably this like a Quetzal player goes, "Get on my back! Ride me into battle!" And it never sounds okay, but I don't have any way to fix that at this point.
I don't think it should be fixed. I think that is that is the just right amount of mature adult humor that sometimes is just necessary at a game. And on the other hand, if you look at it, if you're going to play that game with kids, they don't have their mind in the gutter like us.
Yeah.
For them, it's just going to be, oh my god, I can play a dinosaur.
Yes.
And my friends can actually jump on my back like I do on the back of my dad when we play, and they can actually be even more awesome, and that's what they are going to see, and that's why I think that is an absolutely amazing concept.
Thank you.
So the Mandragorans, on the other hand, the previously dominant species on Terra.
Yeah, they've had kind of a bad run of it for the last 5 years in the setting. They're sort of my toad equivalent. They're a plant-based race. That for some unknown reason look very much like humans. Like, why do they look like humans? Well, there's no explanation in the setting. It's one of those great mysteries. Magic. But no, they look very human. They're not internally, obviously. But they have a great kingdom that has existed for many centuries. And there are other Mandragoran groups across the main continent that are gone into a bit more in the setting book. And they tend to divide themselves into clans based on what plant they feel the most sort of spiritual affinity with. And the clans that are related to flowering plants are the ones that have the high status in society. So all of the leadership of the Mandragoran Kingdom are called the Blossom Courts.
Cool.
Over time, their leadership has changed hands between flowering clans. and their leader is always known by their clan name and either king or queen. So the most recent leader of the kingdom was the Sunflower King. And his daughter, the Peach Blossom Princess, is currently missing in action. She may very well be in another castle.
Yeah, I kind of picked up on the reference there. That was well done. So, but that whole structure of nobility and everything, that's basically gone because of the war. There's really nothing much, not much left of that, right?
All of that has sort of collapsed. The nobility, the surviving nobility, are all in hiding or exile, or working as turncoats with the invaders to try and keep things as far from slaughter as possible. The conquest was swift and terrible, and the invaders are now basically horribly racking the kingdom for resources. Turning beautiful landscapes into strip mines, burning down forests for charcoal. And the Mandragorans had a way of life that was much more in harmony with nature. And so the environment being devastated by these rapacious occupiers is a really terrible thing for them. So a lot of the focus of the setting is not just about the horrors of war and occupation, but about the horrors of environmental collapse.
Yeah, and if you've ever played any Super Mario stage where you had to go to Bowser's castle, you know what that kind of big change in landscape has done. Also, if you've ever played the games, which you probably have, what am I even thinking? The cannons and everything, that's always an enemy. You never see Mario pick up a even sort of makeshift gun or everything. Everything he does is because he's becoming part of the environment, either by becoming a raccoon or using a flower to be able to shoot fireballs. Which brings me to a sort of sidetrack question: are the fire flowers going to be in the game in some form?
Yes, one of the big setting visuals is these glowing, burning plants called pyre blooms, which legend says they bloom when the kingdom is in danger. And so when the Mushroom War started, the pyre blooms all across the kingdom flared up all at once and have not stopped burning. And so if you have the ability to channel magical energy, you can dig up a pyre bloom and wield it as a weapon. And it stays alive while someone who has magic is holding it. And use it to throw blasts of fire. And so the invaders have done their best to try and destroy pyre blooms wherever they can, and see them as a sign of rebellion. And so one of the cover of the Jumpstart actually has a person holding a fistful of fire. The old cover of the Quick Start had a character holding a pyre bloom.
Cool.
But I switched over to the sort of ball of fire in the hand motif to get a little more visual with it. But yeah, no, one of the big things about the setting of Terra is that nature itself is your ally. Nature is your weapon. So there are magical plants everywhere that you can eat for special benefits or wield as weapons. That there are trees that just naturally grow swords for people if they know how to look for them. That you can reach into the ground and pull up a root that you can then just throw as a stone at someone.
Cool. Is that how does that work mechanically? Are those just things you need to know where to find, or is it like weird science? How does it work?
Well, you can do that with magic or weird science, but there are scavenging rules in the setting, so that if you're in a wilderness area, as an action you can basically make a notice or survival roll to look around for some useful piece of flora or fauna to wield in battle. And there are edges that make your survival or notice better for this. So very frequently, you can be like, oh, I really need a weapon right now because, you can't carry weapons in invaded territory openly. So, I'm barehanded and I don't know what I'm doing. Let me look around the garden and see if, someone has managed to sneak in like a bamboo spear plant.
Mm-hmm.
And there are, better results on the scavenging draw, where you might find, a root that heals you, or a poison plant, or somebody managed to sneak in a pyre bloom in a personal planter in their window and no one noticed somehow.
That is interesting. Nice. And I think the last time I ran across scavenging rules for anything, that was way back in Sunlit Skies. So basically we are now getting updated rules for that, and which we can then plunder and use for our own games. So well, in advance, thank you for that.
Always happy to help.
Well, we got a bit sidetracked from the races, so let's get back to them. So the next on my big list, the Myconites.
Yes, Myconites. They're the Goombas of the setting. They're the waves and waves and hordes of enemies used by the invaders as shock troops, fungal berserkers, I call them in a lot of the promo material.
Mm-hmm.
But very much like with the sort of more modern Mario games, you can have friendly ones. There are ones who have broken away from the horde, who have gotten out of the fungal berserker mentality and want to be individuals, want to live lives that don't involve, rampaging across the countryside and, building big piles of rotting leaves to wait around in.
Mm-hmm.
One of the sample characters in the convention game I usually run is a Myconite who has taken on a female identity,
Mm-hmm.
and is a pacifist. Because Myconites are they're fungal in nature and they're genderless by default, but rogue Myconites will sometimes take a gender-based identity, and there's actually a lot of discussion about what gender means in Terra in the book, because it's really different than a lot of people are going to expect. And I really wanted to sort of touch on issues of gender diversity in the real world as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so Myconites, and to a lesser degree Mandragora, are my way of commenting on that sort of thing.
Yeah, so basically saying it doesn't really matter. It's a person. The end. What more do you really need to know? You ask them what pronouns they like to be used with them. The end.
Ask a Myconite. Are you male or female? I'm a Myconite. But what do you have in your pants? Determination.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. That's a great concept. And that was actually that was something that I noticed when I read through that. Very cool. So I assume Myconites can do more than just move forward and backward. They can actually turn.
Yes, they are able to turn now. That's an incredibly major feature for them now. Now the big thing with Myconites is that they are sort of the small, tough, scrappy race of the setting. They're little, but they're tougher than average. They actually have slow regeneration, so they heal really fast. I really wanted to kind of go with like their fungal motif, and the idea that fungus just keeps growing no matter what you do to it.
Yeah, you can scrape it off the wall, but it just always finds a way to come back.
Yes. And I think that having Myconites as a playable race is one of those things that will humanize them to some degree. That having them there, instead of just being like the hordes of nameless enemies you're supposed to mow through in battle, makes people go, no, wait, they're people too. Or at least they could be people if they broke away from the horde.
Yeah. So kind of the same as with the Kappa. They are the shock troops, the soldiers, the everything of the big bad evil dragon empire. But yeah, they are there as as playable characters for those who deserted.
I think I just saw my wife creeping around the corner in the background. Hi, honey. anyways, yeah, the Kappa. I mean, it's not hard to guess who they are.
Nope.
But I mean, that's even a relationship that exists in the original language. I mean, Koopa is kind of supposed to be a funny way of saying Kappa. They're turtle people from cultural mythology. The Kappa in Heroes of Terra are huge. They're like 7 feet tall, solid muscle, big dinosaur people. They have sort of a snapping turtle look to them, and their homeland is awful. It would not be too much of a stretch to say that if they owned that place in hell, they'd rent out their homeland and live in hell.
Wow. Okay, that's bad, yeah.
And so they've been trying to scrape by for centuries in this awful wasteland, of volcanoes and earthquakes and hurricanes and poison water and poor food. And every time they try to come west across the mountains to the better land, the Mandragorans have been there to push them back and basically say, no, you stay in your hellhole.
Mm.
And so they've had centuries to build up this ugly resentment against the dominant race of the setting. And I kind of wanted to say that the Mandragorans are not good. They're more human looking. They're more understandable to a person from Earth. But they did have this system that kept an entire race in this wasteland because they didn't want to be bothered dealing with them.
And now they're reaping what they've sown, so to speak.
Yes, they are. The Kappa used to be a very fractious tribal people. They're cannibals. They eat their own dead. They have very little sense of humor. They're incredibly violent. And so the Mandragorans thought they would never be a major threat because they were too busy fighting themselves. But a generation ago, the Kappa started getting united under this charismatic, powerful figure they call the Dragon Emperor. And he has managed to band together most of the Kappa into something like a cohesive nation and turn them from tribal warriors into legions. And when they came across the mountains this time, they came in numbers and organized with tactics and weapons. And just poured into the Mandragoran lands and stomped their armies flat. Because the Mandragoran have not had a decent fight in like a millennium.
Yeah, and that when a well-oiled and trained war machine shows up at your doorstep, then yeah, you can picture how that turns out. So basically, it's the question that kind of hangs over all of that is, are the Mandragorans a bit of at fault themselves for what happened? Because they just told the Kappas, no, you stay where you are, out of sight in your little pit of hell, instead of saying, well, we can try. Let's see, let's build some settlements together, see if we can get along, but they just said no, so
I think this is one of those things where the Mandragoran leadership is at fault, that the system is to blame. That the average Mandragoran doesn't have a lot of say over how their country is run. Most of them are part of the lower class, non-blossoming clans. But the Blossom Courts made a very intentional decision to exclude the Kappa from the good lands of the continent. And now they're very much reaping what they've sown. But like with any war, the common people are suffering from the poor decisions of their leaders.
So one path the heroes could take is, well, of course, first and foremost, defeat the big Kappa armies and, of course, the Kappa leadership. But then it's not necessarily just stuff them back where they came from or just annihilate them outright, but they could be like, okay, those guys suffered a lot for many thousands of years, so maybe now is the time to try something new. You guys sit down at the table and you talk. We'll just be here and stand guard.
And I think that's actually one of the great things about having humans, people from another world, as sort of the central characters of this mythology, that they have an outside perspective. They're not restricted by the old ways of thinking, by the your clade stays in your land, our clade stays in our land mentality, that they can actually see ways to build bridges. And having Kappa as a playable option in the setting is a nod to that. Not all the Kappa agree with the Dragon Emperor. Many of them think that they're losing their traditional way of life, that their homeland was awful, but it made them strong, it made them independent. And what they're doing now is essentially just stealing, that they're thieves. And a lot of them think that the Dragon Emperor is trying to erase what makes them unique as a people, trying to erase their past. And some of them just think it's making them soft. A lot of the Kappa are contemptuous of the Mandragoran, but now that they're like living among them and occupying their territory, they're finding they don't actually hate them. That they're soft and weak, but they're not evil. And 5 years of occupation have made for some odd friendships across national lines.
Yep, like if a garrison is stationed at a certain town for the whole of the 5 years and it's never rotated out, you get to know the people you are guarding, and if you have that in you, then you form friendships with the people, and in some cases it makes you think, am I even on the right side of this?
If the Mandragoran have all this, why are we taking it? We don't know how to manage this land. We don't know how to make it work for us. We come in here and we take what we want, but we don't know how to make more.
Yeah, absolutely. So, let's go to back to the race list to finish that first before I come to my next question. There is one last on the list, and they are the Puticans.
Yes, the Puticans. They're sort of my love of Shy Guys, who are my favorite Mario enemy. They just have such a great design. They're designed to look like these traditional Japanese funerary statues. And they're just incredibly cool looking and very creepy. And so the Puticans in setting are these asocial inventor types. They don't even like living among others of their own kind. They make things, and they do research, and they figure out how the world works, but they don't share it with each other. The Mandragora are very social people, but the Puticans are very much not. When they live together, it's not for familial reasons or social reasons. It's because there's a research project that one person can't do by themselves, and we're going to get together and live together just long enough to do this research project, and then we all leave. And they used to be sort of a client race of the Mandragoran kingdom. Centuries ago, the Mandragorans had this big expansionist period where they claimed the Quetzal forests and the forests of the Puticans, and were basically like, well, you're our subjects now. And then a bunch of the nobility of the Mandragorans started mysteriously dying in accidents, and no one knew why. And finally, when enough new people had gotten rotated into position, to be like, well, you're a protectorate, so we will protect you from outsiders, but we're not going to impose any laws or taxes, so you do you, buddy. The deaths just stopped for some reason.
Yeah, weird how that sometimes works out, yeah.
So what has sort of come out since the Mushroom War started is that the Puticans have this secret society of masked assassins called the Shy Killers, who enforce their independence and sovereignty. And this secret society of basically assassins and inventors has sort of gotten split over the fact that the Puticans have sort of pledged themselves to the Kappa now because, well, they're not independent anymore. They're beholden to somebody. They're not, avoiding society. But some of the Shy Killers are like, no, this makes us stronger. This makes us in a better position to be our own people later on. But part of the reason for the success of the Kappa invasion is because the Dragon Emperor had sort of subtly sent messengers to the Pewdikins and were like, you make things. You're smart. Make things for us. Be smart for us. And they made all these incredible war machines, constructs, and weapons of war that no one had ever seen before. And a bunch of Pewdikins stuck around as sort of a core of engineers to keep them maintained. And when this came out, the Mandragoran Kingdom was basically like, they betrayed us. We can't trust them anymore. And the Pewdikins were like, we didn't betray you because we were never on your side. You can only betray someone if you're actually working with them, and we don't care about you. But part of the Pewdikin culture is that they're never supposed to be unmasked in public. So they each wear like a unique mask to show their personal identity, and these heavy concealing robes and gloves. And they're never supposed to be seen without those in public. If they are, it's a huge shame to them that someone has seen their true face, has gotten that intimate with them.
Yeah. So that could be an interesting thing to roleplay, I'd say, because you're playing someone who inherently is antisocial and doesn't really want to stick around anyone. But you have a group, and well, you want to play with your friends, so you need to be part of that group. So I guess every Pewdikin player needs to figure out the mantra his Pewdikin lives by that makes him stick around other people. Which, as you said, could be like he's like, okay, yeah, we can't win this war without you. And if we don't win the war, then the Kappas are just going to plow through everything, including us. So for the duration of the war, I'm with you. I may not like it, but that's the way it has to be. And I guess that would be a perfectly acceptable reason and an easy way to say that is why my Pewdikin stays with you. But it could be some much more intricate thing, and with the whole group dynamic. So lots of potential.
There is, and there's actually some discussion in the book that there's this sort of quiet revolution going on in Pewdikin society right now, as Pewdikins are discovering this new and incredible thing called cooperation
on a larger scale.
Yeah, discovering that that multiple minds working towards the same goal is a force multiplier, basically. And there is some discussion in there of Pewdikins who have been exiled from their own people in the past because they were too friendly. You like in the Pewdikin world, you've got that one friend who just won't leave you alone. He comes by your house like every year to talk to you.
Yeah.
God, that guy won't get out of your business.
So annoying.
Like it may sound, they seem really standoffish to others, but you have Pewdikins who are like desperate for attention to other Pewdikins.
So basically you would be playing kind of an outcast to Pewdikin society, and be like, yeah, I've been to an inn which wasn't frequented by only Pewdikins twice in my life. Yeah, the neighborhood didn't like that.
No, not at all.
That is amazing. That's really cool and unique. Wow. That was just a lot of here that is not in the Jumpstart, ladies and gentlemen. So damn.
Yeah, there's a sprawling setting there, and I always worry that when I write a setting this big that I am giving people too much that is too different. But I think about all my own favorite settings like Exalted and Torg, and they're these very different worlds that have deep lore, and I always want to be able to give something that feels like a real world back to people, where the lore is there to dig deep into if you want to, but you don't have to just to play the game. You can just jump in with, I'm from Earth and I'm a human and I'm magical and my buddy is an outcast mushroom man, and just go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. That was just what was just crossing my mind. That was like, if you don't want to dig too deep into that, go with an all-human group. They're the heroes of the setting. Awesome. You do your thing. And for all the guys who really like to dig deep, there's a lot more there than the Jumpstart even hinted at. So yeah, I'm looking very much even more forward
I'm
actually
glad.
digging into that. So, touching up on something that we barely touched upon earlier, there are a lot of playable races, but and there are some Kappa who say, yeah, maybe we could just coexist. But the Kappa are inherently a warrior race, a violent race. They like to fight. They like to mess stuff up. So, what about native monsters and other fauna and flora? Because, well, the Mario world is famous for pipe-dwelling plants who can kill you with one bite. So, how about that aspect of the world?
Terra is a very magical world, so I've tried to go for a mix of things that are, magical animals and plants that could not possibly exist in the real world, and my own love of prehistoric flora and fauna. So there are a lot of dinosaurs in the setting. The bigger ones tend to get referred to in the bestiary as dragons. And so there's the fearsome swamp dragon, a massive upright beast with tiny forelimbs that hunts through the dank swamps. And for some reason, humans call them T-Rexes, and we don't know why. But now, there's a lot of things in that. Ankylosaurs are in there, apatosaurs. Quetzalcoatlus, my favorite of the flying semi-dinosaurs. Thing is huge. I don't know if you're familiar with Quetzalcoatlus. It's the largest flying animal to have ever existed. It has a wingspan of about 50 or 60.
Wow.
Has a beak as long as a human.
I knew the name, but I knew it only from Shadowrun, where they use it for a big flying feathered serpent. So, okay, that was based on reality. I did not know that. Thank you.
Yeah. But no, there's a lot of that sort of thing, and there's a lot of little to the origins of the setting. There are carnivorous plants. There is the magical variant that spits fire at people. There are man-sized beetles. One of my favorite weird monsters in the Mario games is the Thwomp, which is just a big block with a face on it. When you walk by, it tries to crush you. And I had this thought of, what in the world could this actually be in a semi-realistic setting? And so I had this idea of these huge cave snails that have rocky, camouflaged shells, whose primary hunting method is to try and drop on you from cave ceilings because they're so slow on the ground. And so these huge cave snails are one of the creatures in the bestiary. You also have your lava dwelling worms, because you always have those things in a Mario game, and dry bones, skeletons. Sort of thing about ghosts in the Mario world. Those little white blobs with the face on them that are so shy they look away from you when you're looking at them. That actually was one of the things that led me to sort of thinking about how the spiritual world of Terra works. I started thinking about the living energy of the world, that magic and life are sort of the same thing, and so ghosts are sort of the remnant living energy of a person who's died. It doesn't remember being the person. It's just a blob of their life energy that didn't quite dissipate for whatever reason. It's slowly leaking over time, and so it has to steal life energy from other people to keep surviving. But because it's weak, it always does this from ambush whenever possible. And so you have these little luminous clouds that are sneaky and hide a lot, and then jump out of nowhere to try and bite you.
Cool. Are there big black blobs with eyes and that are pure mouth?
There are really, really big ghosts. Yes. The setting book calls them wraiths, and they are immense. They're basically ghosts that manage to eat a bunch of other ghosts over time, and become this immense swirling nightmare of life energy that is always hungry because it's so big it can't sustain itself very well.
Yep.
And so it's always on the hunt. So it's, you can imagine like this luminous cloud just sort of rolling over a landscape, leaving behind dead animals as it passes.
Yeah. Yeah, and if you thought that those in the game were creepy, that is an interesting mental image, yep. So that just reinforces a bit more on the point that it's all based on a rather whimsical game, but it has a very serious undertone with it, with politics, with gender, with race, with war. So basically the idea is I guess you make it as deep cutting as you want to. But if you just want to go somewhere where you're playing a human that can throw fireballs and punch big mushrooms in the face, you can just do just that.
Yes. I really wanted to make a setting where you could approach it with, this real seriousness, if you wanted to, of the Kappa destroyed my home, and I'll stop at nothing to drive them out. Or you could approach it with, let's punch some turtles, I wanted there to be a setting where there was this real threat, but a sense of whimsy. I love things that have a sense of whimsy to them. My favorite book growing up was Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, and Wonderland is a world where there is real darkness at times. There's an insane queen who cuts people's heads off. There are these massive floods that can drown you in an instant. But, there's also talking turtles and rabbits who are always late for something. I think that as children, we're much better able to integrate darkness and whimsy together and not see them as separate things. That you have to see them as a spectrum and be able to move from one to the other. And I've always tried to recapture that sort of spectrum in my writing of moving between darkness and whimsy without it feeling jarring.
Yep, from what I've read in the Kickstarter, I think you've definitely succeeded in that point. It sounds serious enough, but with all the lighter tones to it of being a game that you can just play on a Sunday afternoon just to have fun. And not worry about the big picture. Cool. So, humans come there and they discover they are magical. You're going to do that with the arcane background gifted.
Yes.
So, the Jumpstart also talks about something called the Blossoming Path. What is that?
The Blossoming Path is the in-world name for the big magical practice of the setting, sorcery. Since the world Terra is inherently magical, and magic and life energy are tied together, magic in Terra is all about understanding your connectedness to the world, to realizing that your energy and the energy of the world and the energy of the animals and plants in it are the same thing, and imploring the living energy of the world to help you. And so sorcerers in the world of Terra, one of the big conceits of the setting is that you have to speak to be able to use your powers, because you're actually talking to the spirits of the living world. And so the spell casting skill in game is referred to as flower speak. And the Blossoming Path is the big organized school of magic that existed in the Mandragoran Kingdom before the war. It was interlinked in with the flowering courts and with the nobility of the kingdom in this really interlocked way that like the church and the state would have been in any medieval earthly government. And so you have these magi of the Blossoming Path who have gotten themselves so wrapped up in their understanding of their oneness with nature that they've basically just gone off into self-imposed exile so they can spend all their time contemplating that oneness. So you have a lot of mad old wizards in isolated towers in the setting that you can run into to get help or need something from. And there's a nice organized way of approaching magic so that you could have been an apprentice before the war or someone who was learning from a recognized teacher before the war, which is where you got your powers from.
Cool. So are there any restricted backgrounds in there, or is everything in there including weird science? And if so, how does weird science work in that set?
Oh, well, the only core arcane background that's not in the setting is psionics. I never saw a place for it. I just could not find a good way to make it work, so it's just not there. People with the arcane background gifted to go back just a little bit are called channelers. They're people whose magic is just literally a miracle. No one knows how it works. They just want magic to happen, and it happens. People from the Blossoming Path who are like, magic is formalized, and you have to say these specific words and make these correct gestures and ask the spirits for something. They're like, I got no idea how you do that. That's just weird, man.
That should not work. What you just did
that shouldn't work. And then you have the weird science arcane background, which is sort of broadly referred to as Magitech in the setting because that's the form of it most people know. In Terra, when you take weird science, you have to take a paradigm, how your magic works in the context of your learning. And the most common one is Magitech, that you tinker together these weird devices to channel power through them, and you're unlocking the magical energy that's in you, but that you don't have the sort of the willpower to do through traditional sorcery. And so the Pudican thing is Magitech. They build these arcane devices that shouldn't work, but do because they're channeling magic through them. There are a couple of other alternate paths to weird science in the setting, though. The traditional one that the Kappa use is rune carving, where they take stones and engrave mystic symbols on them that lock power into them as sort of these freestanding equations of magic.
Mm-hmm.
And the other big one is the Mandragoran traditional way, Gormancy, where you use magic in cooking and lock magic into the food. And so Gormancy was always sort of considered to be like the peasant's magic, because the Blossoming Path was the nobility and the upper class sorcery, and then you had these peasants making magic cupcakes. And so a big part of the resistance movement in the Mushroom War is actually Gormancers in various villages who have all these magical abilities, and the Kappa either don't know or don't care. Because they're like, people who make food, don't you just kill an animal and eat it for food? Yeah. What's wrong with you? And they're like, would you like a cupcake, my lord? It's full of cyanide. No,
yeah.
But no, you have this entire group of like peasant chefs who have magical powers and use them to covertly aid the resistance. And so talking about paradigm and weird science makes you think about, what do my powers actually look like? And one of my favorite pieces of art that Jen did for the Jumpstart is of this Pudican, like, playing a pipe organ that is shooting fire out of it. Like it's a backpack pipe organ with a keyboard strapped to his chest, and that just looked amazing to me.
Cool.
And so it's this idea that Magitech, magical technology doesn't have to look like anything that you would assume works on Earth. You have your standard like ray guns and lightning pistols, but you also have this guy who is playing Inagata Davida on a pipe organ to make things explode.
If that isn't a good reason to have We Will Rock You playing while playing, I don't know what is. Nice. So we've touched on many things that regarded the past of the world of Terra. So what about the future? Will there be a plot point campaign in the book?
Well, one of the stretch goals of the Kickstarter campaign is to include the plot point campaign in the main book. The plot point campaign is titled "Our Princess is in Another Castle,"
Yes.
and the whole point of the plot point campaign, is to find out where the Peach Blossom Princess actually is, defeat the Dragon Emperor's 7 lieutenants, and then take the fight to him.
Mm-hmm.
And that's sort of the sort of, I guess, standard campaign. If the Kickstarter does well enough, that'll just be included in the main book. If it doesn't do well enough to include it in the main book, it'll still be coming down the pipe at some point in the future. It just might take a while.
Nice. Cool. Something to
But there's also, like, in the notes I've got for the adventure right now, the campaign includes, like, several options for where is the Peach Blossom Princess. And one of them is she's a player character.
Mm-hmm.
There is, like, a sidebar in the notes I've got so far. Basically, what if one of the player characters wants to be the Peach Blossom Princess in disguise in exile? And so that's just an option in the campaign, is that she's not in another castle. She's been with you all along. The real treasure was friendship. And there are lots of reasons why you still want to save all the fake princesses if the real one is with you. But as a plot point campaign, it's sort of a shell game. If the Peach Blossom Princess is not with the party, she's in one of the castles, probably.
Cool.
Oh, but I hope there's enough options presented in that you could play it twice and still be surprised when she turns up.
Oh, replayability in a plot point campaign. That is, well, every plot point campaign is replayability. You just need to hand it to a different GM and say, hey, please run this for us, and it's going to be a completely different journey than what you've already experienced. But that takes it kind of to another level. That's an interesting concept. Cool. So, well, going a bit beyond Terra. So Terra is obviously a homage to the world of the Mario Brothers. So how about different worlds? Because Metroid, please.
Well, I want to say actually that while Mario is the most obvious influence on Terra, I actually intend it sort of be an homage to a lot of different early 80s console games. There are portions of the setting that are Legend of Zelda inspired, parts of it that touch on Donkey Kong or on other games. I like during my early discussion about this with some of my friends who are also role players or writers. One of the guidelines I had was, if you could see the character showing up in the original Smash Brothers, they probably have a place in Terra. And the newer Smash Brothers games have kind of knocked that out, because I just don't see Solid Snake or Bayonetta working in Terra.
Yeah, agreed.
But otherwise, the goal was always that this is not just Mario Brothers, the setting. It's early 80s video game nostalgia, the setting. But no, the other things I would like to do with the Terra multiverse, I guess, is have sort of a space opera, space fantasy setting that is like a mashup of Metroid and Star Fox and a couple of other things. Someone jokingly said, make it Metroid, Star Fox, and F-Zero.
Oh yeah, I remember that discussion. That would be great, because the minimum speed you're going in F-Zero is what, like 400 kilometers per hour?
Something like that. Yeah, it's crazy fast. I can't imagine going that fast of my own volition. Like I have to like take an Ambien before I fly.
Yeah, I know that feeling. Oh wow. Okay, so something we can look forward to. Awesome. Nice. That just made one interviewer very happy. Thank you.
Well, I'm happy to help.
All right, well, that is about everything I had written on my precious cue card. So, Jeremy, anything you would like to plug? Any shout-outs?
I want to take a moment again to say that the people at Pinnacle are some of the best people I've worked with in the industry. Jody and Clint Black are amazingly professional, amazingly friendly people. Shane Hensley is a great guy. I got to meet him once at a convention a long time ago, and he will not remember me, I guarantee you. But they are all wonderful people. I am so thrilled to be working with this great system they have put together, and to be working in the Aces licensee milieu. It's just been an incredible pleasure from beginning to end. I also would like to say that I do have a Patreon. I am putting out regular Savage Worlds content for it right now. I'm working on a thing called the Savage Bestiary, where every weekday I release a new Savage Worlds monster, and every other Friday I release a big chunk of related monsters. I'm also on that Patreon working on a Cortex Prime horror action setting called Children of the Dark, which is sort of an homage to Clive Barker's Nightbreed and to the 90s era World of Darkness games. Yeah. You can find out lots more about that on my Patreon. I'm on Patreon as patreon.com/Jeremy Puckett. It's not hard to find me. Thank you so much for having me here. It's been a real pleasure.
Well, thank you for joining me, and yep, likewise. This was amazing. This was very informative and lots of fun. And yeah, looking forward to your work. For you guys out there watching, you will find everything referenced over the course of this interview below this video in the doobly-doo. In the doobly-doo, which we usually call the description. So yeah, that's going to be...
I watched too much John and Hank Green. I'm so sorry.
Oh man, those two guys are so amazing. The world would
great.
be a darker place without them. All right, so, well, Jeremy, thank you very much for joining me. Every one of you, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. And until then, stay savage. Bye.
Thanks.